it. We've got plenty to discuss in the National Football League, and we've got new coaches. We've got new coaches who are first-time coaches who don't really have an opportunity to install their systems. But one of the things we are learning as it relates to the New York Giants, the system that they use on offense may look a lot like the system that has been in use and will still be in use in Dallas. Here's Joe Judge, first-year coach of the Giants, talking about the offense that his team may be using with former Cowboys coach Jason Garrett as the coordinator.
I think schematically the easiest way to describe it to kind of the outside world right now is, it's going to be similarly based off what Jason's done in Dallas over the last 10 or so years. So there's going to be some similarities carried to that, but it's got to cater to our players we have on our roster currently.
All right, there he is, Joe Judge. And this is the kind of thing that I think would get Giants fans to throw soup at the TV like Mickey and Rocky 2. I don't know that you want to publicize to the world that you're going to use the Jason Garrett offense, because one of the reasons Jason Garrett isn't the coach in Dallas anymore, Peter King, is because of the Jason Garrett offense. Your thoughts?
Well, I'll say this about the Jason Garrett offense. Has been a lot more productive than the New York Giants offense in the last few years.
It's true. It's true.
And so, look, if you're going to hire a coach, he's going to coach what he knows. Now, Joe Judge has never been an offensive coordinator. He's never been an offensive-minded guy. So the question is, whoever you hire, if you hired, if you hired Chan Gailey, he's probably going to do something that's a lot like they had been doing in Dallas or Pittsburgh or wherever he had been. So I don't criticize the Giants for doing that. I would criticize the Giants for hiring Jason Garrett and saying, whoa, you can't coach what you have been coaching. You got to go to a wide open run and shoot now. With 4 and 5 wides every snap. You're not doing that. You're going to go to the guy's strengths. And they would not have hired Jason Garrett if they thought he had a horse crap offense the last few years in Dallas.
Yeah, that's right, Peter. I mean, you're right. They would not have. And the Joe Judge, listen, he I'm sure understands there. When I first read the comment or whatever, I said, man, he's got to be careful with those type of comments, knowing that the fan base might be, Jason Garrett's offense stunk in Dallas and all those things. Now, he tried to say, hey, to the basic fan, it's going to look similar to Dallas. But I don't think it's going to be what we saw in the last few years. And to Peter's point, too, Dallas's offense has been better than we give it credit for as a national media or football fans or whatever it may be. I mean, it was the number one offense in football last year. And I think people forget that. And, of course, listen, I know there were some stale points, or it was the number 2 offense. Am I right? Am I 1 or 2? I'm
number
blanking out.
1.
I'm right.
Number 1 in total yards.
So when you look at that, right, and I understand some of the criticism with Jason Garrett's offense, because there's been some years where we go, man, there's not a lot of motions and movements and things like that. But I also would say Jason Garrett was not totally in charge of the offense the last few years either. And we saw improvements. He got rid of Scott Linehan, made a nice move to get to Kellen Moore. And then let's also not forget the fact that Jason Garrett is going to be just the offensive coordinator here for the New York Giants. And Jason Garrett's street record as an offensive coordinator is pretty damn good. When you go back to his early days in Dallas, when he left the Miami Dolphins, went to the Cowboys, was the offensive coordinator, then was the offensive coordinator and play caller. Hey, the offense put up a lot of numbers and points and yards all the time. It really did. Now, when it came into a problem is he mismanaged some games because he was too worried about trying to figure out the offensive plays. And then that's when, he or Jerry Jones kind of took the power away from him. So I think with Jason Garrett's ability to kind of just hunker in on the offense, I don't think Giant fans should be scared. And to Peter's point, that Cowboy offense has been a lot better than that Giant offense the last 4 or 5 years. That's for sure.
Yeah, you know what? That is an excellent point. And it's amazing the perception out there conflicts so sharply with the reality. When I pulled up the rankings from 2019 of all offenses, I'm looking for the Cowboys somewhere below 1 or 2, and it's like, where are the Cowboys? Surely they were in the top half last year. Dak Prescott had 4,900 passing yards. Ezekiel Elliott had 1,300 rushing yards. They have to be in the top half, and I look up, and there they are at the very top, 431.5 yards per game. That's nearly 24 more yards per game on average than the number 2 offense in football last year, the Baltimore Ravens. That is amazing. Now, they're number 6 in scoring, the Cowboys were, at 27.1 points per game, which still isn't bad. But I'm trying to reconcile why the perception and the reality don't mesh. And I think part of the problem is, and Chris, you hit on it, early in his career, Jason Garrett demonstrated an inability to micromanage the offense and macromanage the team. And he made bad decisions as the head coach while focused on the play-in and play-out grind of knowing what the next play is going to be, what's the next play going to be. This is something Tony Dungy explained at the time, and I recall this vividly. You have to be able to do both things, and if you can't do both things, stop doing both things. And it took a while, but the Cowboys eventually figured out we can't let him do both things. But, the problem is because the Cowboys hung on to Jason Garrett for so long, instead of firing him, they almost kind of marginalized him. They created this perception. They created this reputation that he's not a very good coach, Peter. And I think the Cowboys keeping him longer than they should have is one of the reasons now we view him as broken in some way, when the reality is he may not be broken at all.
I mean, here's the way you got to look at Jason Garrett, okay? So the Dallas Cowboys in the last few years, as an organization and as a team on the field, underachieved. Now, they've actually drafted pretty well. They haven't drafted peerlessly, but they've drafted pretty well, okay? And when that happens consistently year after year, you don't get to the promised land. When you work for Jerry Jones, eventually that is going to cost you your job. Now, it was a long eventually in Dallas. But again, look, I look at the way the Cowboys have played football in the last 4 years. And basically, this is a team that's averaging about, 390 points a game, in the last 4 years, or 390 points a season, in the last 4 years. And when I look at that, that's going to be in the top 10, almost every year if you average that. And so to me, it wasn't the weakness of the offense that got Jason Garrett fired. It's basically the mediocrity of the program that got him fired.
Yeah, I would agree with that in a lot of ways. The overall look of Jason Garrett and the perception that it sent to the fans, the media, everything about it. One, hey, Dallas Cowboys offense last year, statistically, yes, it was number 1. You guys know it wasn't the best offense in football. It wasn't. It's not better than Baltimore's. It wasn't better than the 49ers. Think about all the games those teams didn't even play in the fourth quarter because they blew teams out. Dallas also last year, let's not forget, got a lot of garbage time yards, whether it was the Bears game or a few other games, and they feasted on the weak to a degree. But within all of that, Jason Garrett is an extremely intelligent human being. And I think the fact that, he'll understand what is being talked about around him and his situation. And I think the fact that he's going to be just the offensive coordinator and not have to worry about all these other things is going to make him his ability to hunker down and be more creative and try new things. I think that's going to be a big thing for him too. But I think Peter is right, and he's onto something. And Mike, you are too. It's the overall look like, it's the underwhelming big moments. Oh, 2018, they go to the playoffs. They win a playoff game. Wow, yeah. But then they go to the Rams and don't play that well out there. Hey, 2016, they're 13-3, and you're going, they're the best team in football. They're so dominant. They let Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers come into town and kind of wipe the floor with them there and have those amazing throws. And, they don't get to the NFC Championship game. So I think it's all of it a little bit that's been thrown in on Jason Garrett and this perception of him that he's less than as an offensive mind.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to how many games you'll win and what you do when the season is on the line. This is a team that continues to have a drought in NFC Championship game appearances that goes back to 1995. And last year, for as good as the offense is, highest rated offense in football from a yardage standpoint. 8-8 as a football team. That's the problem, and that's why the Cowboys eventually cut the cord, even if they did so a few years too late. So now that Garrett takes over in New York, he's got Daniel Jones as his primary pupil, and that, I don't know, the Giants hope is an upgrade over Pat Shurmur as the person developing Daniel Jones. Peter, what do we think Garrett can do with Daniel Jones when we acknowledge the reality that Jason Garrett had to have had a significant hand in the development of a guy named Dak Prescott, who has become one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL?
I think there's two things that Jason Garrett brings. Number one, it is exactly that. Over the last 4 years, he developed a mid-fourth round pick into a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And so if you look at some of the things he did with Dak Prescott, and then you look at the skills that Daniel Jones has, the beneficiary of all this, in my opinion, is the New York Giants offense, because Jason Garrett wants to coach a quarterback who can move. If he came in and coached Eli Manning, I'm sure he would have done fine and they would have been very productive. But he wants movement to be a part of his offensive game for the quarterback. And number two, I think what you're going to see him do much more than the previous regime or regimes is he's really going to try to get the tight end more involved in this offense. He believes that, the tight end and running personnel that, and look, you see what you see around the NFL right now with people continuing to go more and more wide receivers. But there's still a cadre of coaches around the NFL that wants to have 3 healthy tight ends on game day and wants to run some formations with 2 tights. You look and see what Matt Nagy did, and I'm not calling him the greatest offensive coach in the world either, but he was so concerned last year with tight ends because they had 3 tight ends on injured reserve. He's so concerned that he takes one with their first pick in the draft, he and Ryan Pace. So I'm saying that he's going to have a quarterback who moves. He's going to use the tight end a little bit more. And now he's just got to hope that the young wide receiving core is going to develop into something approximating what they had in Dallas.
Well, yeah, and hey, to echo that a little bit, I mean, the NFL is kind of going back right into the direction, I think, of, Jason Garrett's, his generation of play calling to a degree. Peter talks about, hey, yeah, there's teams dabbling in the spread and more wide receivers, but you can also sit there and look at the Ravens, the 49ers, hey, the Tennessee Titans who we saw in the NFC Championship game, the Eagles, the Rams. They're very into running the football. And Jason Garrett, and with this offensive line that the New York Giants, have kind of retooled here, with Saquon Barkley, he's going to have some toys to play within the run game. And then, off of what Peter said with Daniel Jones, from everything I saw last year, I mean, it makes me think he's got a chance to be really special. I mean, he was the MVP of the Giants last year. They put the game on his shoulders more times than not with a bad offensive line, Saquon not being totally healthy at the running back position. It was kind of like, hey, Daniel, we need you to drop back 40 times and you got to throw 3 touchdowns and 1 interceptions or we can't win the game. And he did that a number of times. I mean, he really played phenomenal with not big-time talent around him at the wide receiver position. I think Jason Garrett really smart. He's going to formulate an offense that fits the skill set of all these guys and make the vision of the team under what Joe Judge really wants it to be successful.
I want a 5-second answer from each of you on this question as it relates to the running back swap that Jason Garrett has inherited. Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, which one would you prefer? Peter.
I'd rather have Barkley because he's just a little bit younger.
I'd rather
Chris.
have Barkley, too. Barkley can make more with less, and Barkley, if there's a chance to go 70, he can go 70, so I'm taking Barkley.
Yeah, you know what? I hate to say it because I love Ezekiel Elliott, but I think Saquon Barkley's got a higher ceiling, and he's got more tread on the tire.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.